Okay, looks like we should be live now. How are you guys doing? Let me know in the chat. Let me know what your week has been like, what has been coming up for you. What are the energies that you're feeling? What changes are you making in your life? We've been discussing about spiritual awakening. We've been discussing divine union, so union with your higher self, union with the inner feminine and masculine aspects within you. We've been talking about this same theme. So today I'm talking about spiritual gifts. Last week was the 1111 portal, and it was about the system upgrades to humanity. And this was a theme that I got from Erica Elmet's video. So if you want to see the link for that, you can go and see the live stream from last week. And the link for her video should be in either the description or the comments below the video. But as a consequence of upgrading our system, we can naturally expect to see latent gifts that we have where there has been that potential that either you have developed but can increase your ability going forward, or that you didn't realize you had and now it's going to emerge. So this is going to be happening for the people who either are not aware that this is what's going on and are, wow, what's happening? Or those of us we have an idea of what's happening, and yeah, we can realize, you know what, this is not so crazy. This is within a paradigm that we are familiar with. Hi, Heather. I've been spending lots and lots of hours this last week doing shadow work, and I've never felt better. How was your week? Awesome. So awesome. This is the perfect time to really dig in and dive deep on whatever you feel calls out or stands out to you, because of all like the energetic things that are happening. Like in last week's live stream, I was referencing different people who I listen to who do a lot of spiritual work. And there was this consistent theme, there was this consistent message that we are in this incredible time in history where there's a lot of changes going on beneath the surface of things. And yeah, it can be upsetting if we just look at it from an outside perspective, but if you start to tune into what's happening, starting to tune into the potential and possibility within you, things that are being released and what's emerging beyond that, it can be really, really, really beautiful. So much potential and so much opportunity here for us. For my week, I started walking every day. I started walking an hour and a half every day, getting outside during the daylight hours. And that felt good. That felt really good. I've still been scrolling on YouTube. Like, I haven't been perfect about that, although I have had moments where I've checked myself and I've been like, okay, no, we're not going to do that. The urge comes up. It's kind of an automatic response, and I've just been, okay, not going to do that. I did some yoga and some HIIT training. and today was really sore, but I went skiing and got some exercise in. Usually on Saturdays, I've been just spending all day preparing for the live stream, but this week I was like, no, I gotta get out and enjoy the sun a little bit. And yeah, it was beautiful. If you've been watching my videos that I've been posting, there has been certain themes that have been coming up, and they've been reoccurring themes. A lot of them are things that I've touched on in previous videos, but it was so interesting because between the live streams and between doing the videos, there has been this connections being made within me, realizing, oh wow, like this is connected to this and this is emerging from that. So it was really helpful for me to just go through the process of making the video and editing the video and having those things percolate down within me. I had 2 realizations this week that will be going into videos. One of them was the idea of projecting your expectations onto someone else, and I realized how I was doing that. And I realized that, wow, you know, I have been arguing with reality. I want this person to be different. I want them to be a certain way, and they're not. And if they're not this way, then it means X, Y, and Z, and I don't like that. And then I just realized I could have this level of acceptance with that. Just accepting that this is how it is, and you know, maybe I don't know everything about the situation, maybe it's a different way, but whatever way it is, I always have the choice to choose whether to engage with that situation or that person or not. I can't change the situation, I can't change the person, but I can choose how I want to respond. Now, we want our lives to be easy and flow smoothly, so we want things to kind of be perfect. And that was the struggle that I was having. I wanted this idea of how I wanted it to be, and I wanted this certainty. I wanted to know so I could make plans. But then I found so much peace in releasing that and realizing when the situation arises, I can make decisions in that situation according to what feels the best for me, according to my emotional guidance system, which has had several scenarios in the past, which have taught me things to look out for, that I really need to pay attention to my emotions and pay extra careful attention, because it is so easy to dismiss your own emotions, your own intuition for the sake of pleasing someone else. Not necessarily that they want you to do that, but that can be something within yourself that comes up that I've realized you have to be so mindful of. So there's a lot of trust that has to happen with yourself, lots of tuning in with yourself, and this is really a skill that you build up within yourself over time. The other aspect of that was, yeah, I don't want this problem that hurt me in the past to show up in the future. But that's really projecting pain from the past onto the future. I can be in the moment and just feel the pain of that, whatever happened in the past. And then whatever happens in the future, just be present in the moment for that. The other aspect that I realized this morning that was really an aha moment for me was I was feeling pain and sadness that came up during my walk yesterday, and I had a cry on the walk. I find that for me, any kind of physical movement helps to kind of release stuck energy within myself. So I was feeling this heartache and sadness that would be coming up during the week, and the mind says, okay, it's because this person did this. And it was such intense sadness and pain. I don't know if that's really why. I've been thinking about this, and this morning I thought about it and I realized, you know what? yes, they did this and it feels this and this and this way. I was writing in my journal. And I dismissed my feelings. I disregarded my experience, my intuition. The biggest pain is what I did to myself, because someone else triggers us, and it doesn't diminish, if you don't like what they did, and that hurts. But the bigger aspect of the pain can come from when what they trigger is something that lives inside of you. And I thought, you know what? I used to have horrible, horrible mental self-talk, and I had to train myself out of it. So I can see that there was a part of me that was really cruel to myself, and I can see how that within me, there was already that seed of pain, and they just nudged and poked it. So that's where all the extra pain is coming from. And I was like, you know what? If that's the issue, if it's not me trying to get them to heal that pain inside of me, I can forgive myself. I can heal that. And then I'm a little bit upset with that person, but then I'm not trying to get them to heal this big thing inside of me. And actually, when I realized that, I released it, and I haven't felt it since. I mean, that was just today. Maybe it'll come back. Maybe I'll have to go through more iterations of this, but it is these subtle changes where we can shift our perception and kind of tune into what's really happening here. So the topic of today is really interesting. I did not have enough time to do all the research that I wanted to put in here, so we're going to have to put we're going to have to probably do a part 2, maybe even a part 3. But I did get some material in here for it. Feeling is healing. Yep. I found a channel that guides us through the healing process. Mind Garden Mastery. Please check it out when you've got some free time. They use the EFT technique. Yeah, the EFT technique. I have heard about it. Mind Garden Mastery. Cool. Thank you so much for sharing. That's awesome. So, yeah, as a precursor to developing spiritual gifts, there is a foundation that we need. And part of that is going to be emotional healing, having a heart space centered in love, and then navigating the ego. So being able to recognize, when the negative thoughts come up, those intrusive thoughts, those thoughts that hurt a lot, that are reflecting inner wounds, a lot of those thought patterns and emotional patterns. So you kind of have to recognize those so you can differentiate between those and whatever intuitive messages you're getting. So there is that level of healing that has to happen. There has to be a level of mental, emotional, physical health and stability. And so there's various ways you can do that. Thank you for sharing that, Ravina. So that is so on point, because that is an excellent technique that you can use to help give yourself that balance in your life. We have to really take care of all aspects of ourselves and not neglect them. So that's why I'm asking about how is your week? Were there any changes? Because developing these kind of habits that support our well-being and health are really, really important for our spiritual growth. So before I move on to the slides, I'm going to talk a little bit about my life experience and why I'm bringing up the importance of physical, mental, and and emotional health. So some of you may remember in 2012, there was this big thing where it was going to be the end of the world. It was the end of the Mayan calendar, and it marked this really significant point. There were a lot of people who had spiritual awakenings around that time, and they started doing their work, spiritual work, and now they are really rooted and grounded in that, and they're providing leadership for the many people who are just being forced to have spiritual experiences outside of the norm of what we expect if you just have a level of awareness of the physical world. In 2012, like more 2013, is when I got my first depressive episode. Here's the really interesting part, is that there's an overlap between mental health and spiritual things that are happening. So, and this is the tricky part, because you can't neglect the mental health aspect of it, like the practical aspect of it, but then we can also recognize there's the spiritual aspect to it as well. I never knew exactly what was the cause. No one could explain it for me. It was so much confusion as I was navigating through that, and it was really dark. A lot darker than what you might expect for someone like me to experience. So looking back, I can see that there was an aspect of spiritual growth that was pushing me towards. And that was during a time where I was obsessed with spiritual growth. I was in the Christian church, and I was reading all about, I forget the name of it, intercessory prayer. I was reading about satanic cults, spiritual warfare, getting right into it. And around this time was when I started to feel really scary energy. I desperately wanted these spiritual gifts, but I was experiencing night terrors. So it's like nightmares. It's quite scary. Bit of like day, the same thing, like kind of during the day, like a nightmare, but being conscious and just like kind of being gripped by this fear. And it was like your perception is like, there's a filter of fear over your perception. It's freaky. And also like a vision. So I had a vision while I was conscious. So I was working through this, and I had a vision of me flying through the clouds with Jesus on pink flamingos. So we're going to discuss later about how there's a certain element of interpretation involved when you are getting intuitive messages. I don't know what pink flamingos means. I mean, it was a peaceful vision. It's kind of not what you'd expect. And it's so interesting that not too long ago, we did the lives on dream interpretation. And it's so interesting because the dream interpretation lives that we did, they relate directly to the session we're doing today. So there is this level of synchronicity where you can have guidance throughout your life and not even know that it's happening, because if you have higher level guidance, either from your higher self or spiritual guides, then it can come in as kind of, you can't separate it, what's yours and what's coming in from a higher power or a higher source. So you could be guided, but not even realize that that's what's happening. I'd like to fly a pink flamingo any day. I mean, like, you're expecting like this grandiose spiritual thing, and then you get flamingos, and you're like, okay. Like, it's so, like, there's so much discernment that is required when you start to get into this territory, that you need balance in your life. you need other things to balance it out. And the reason why I'm really discussing this and bringing this up is because if we look back from that point, at that point, I had enough. I'm like, I'm not getting into this deeper. Because like I was reading books and they're saying like you can use anointing oils to protect yourself, and then you anoint the doorways and you say these prayers, and I was so stressed. I was like, and I had all this fear because I was fearing dark entities, demonic entities. It's not as if they don't exist, but I cut myself off from experiencing all of that, and I kind of developed this wall or protective wall around me where I'm like, no, whatever, I don't care. And I haven't felt that since. So I almost basically erected this self-preservation barrier so I could just live my life. And in that time, I had a bit of this martyr mindset where I didn't like my life enough to find enjoyment in that. So I was trying to substitute that by being a spiritual hero, I guess. So that's not healthy. And it's taken 10 years, and I've been consistently working on building up the different areas of my life. I went to school, and through that whole period, I was working on my mental health, emotional health, basically building the foundations for where I am now. I went to school, got a job, so now I have a career. And it's been, it's been ups and downs, right? You can't do everything at once. During the first year of working my job, I wasn't able to exercise that much, and now I'm kind of getting more into it and being able to do more like that. I also dealt with so much pain too, so I was working on that. So, everything takes time. So you can recognize everything you've done before. All of it was building to something. And you might have particular sensitivities that actually reflect spiritual gifts that might have made it really difficult for you in your life. But you know what? Let's look on the bright side. Where you are now, you might be primed to develop your spiritual gifts because you've put in all this work ahead of time. So that's the flip side. That's the fun part of it. And I just wanted to go through that as a precursor for what we're talking about, because the more esoteric you go, the more grounded you need to be. There's always that level of balance that you need. So here we're going to get into it. Okay, so I took a course by Jeffrey Allen called Duality with Mind Valley, and there was a 7-day free trial, so I took the entire course in the 7-day free trial. I don't know if they still have that. Just a little tip. Maybe if they don't have it, maybe that'll come back as an option. So I took this course, it was a while ago. So I actually have these materials to access, and I haven't done any of the work since I took the course. That's okay. But I just remembered, wow, I have this course. I could do this work. And I just wasn't in a place where I could sustain the focus for that. And it's possible that now I'm in the perfect place where I'm ready for that. So I have the setup for moving into this. And this is kind of exciting for us to start exploring. Looking back, I notice within myself, I do feel this fear. And now that you know my story, what I've shared, there was a lot of fear. I was trying to ski race, and the place I was living, it was very dark, it was very cold, it was in the mountains, these like this little town that was surrounded by these like sharp mountains, and it was like I didn't have any emotional support, financial support. It was rough, and the environment really reflects my emotional state at the time. Cold, icy, isolated. So there is this level of fear that I kind of experience when I think about diving into this. But if we look back at the past year and what I've been sharing the videos, so I haven't explicitly said this, but really what I've been doing, like the closest therapeutic equivalent to what I've been doing would be called somatic experiencing therapy. Basically, processing emotions, feeling them in the body, letting yourself feel them, and then by feeling them, that you process them, and usually by the end of feeling through them, then the conscious mind is able to make the connections. So I've been talking about what I've been feeling, and I'm just processing it and letting it out there. Not that you need to talk about it, but it just gave an outlet to express what I was going through and basically people to connect to, because there wasn't anyone in my life around me who would be able to connect to what I was going through. So that was a really great outlet for me. So don't dismiss, oh, I did this course, but I never practiced it. Well, you know what? Maybe that can come up in the future when you're really ready for it. Because here's the thing, you can have all this passion to grow spiritually, and angels are listening, your guides are listening. They're like, yes, okay, we'll give it to you, because we live in a universe where your consent is required. So as soon as you give your consent, they're like, yes, we'll give it to you. And then what happens? There's stuff that you have to work through. Stuff comes up that you have to work through. And when you're going through the dark periods, the heavy stuff, it's not fun. So sometimes there does have to be that level of work. So you might move away from something for a certain amount of time because it's just too heavy for you. That's okay. And you might be seeing a lot of things happening in your life that are coming together now. Like different things that have happened and different things you've learned about. They're making connections, connecting the dots. And you're like, oh, wow. So this has really helped me to be where I am now. And I thought about it this week. It's like, oh, man, like I've struggled so much, and if I compare myself to these other people who haven't had those struggles, it feels like I've been going backwards, right? Like I haven't been able to have that level of success. Well, guess what? We're moving into a new reality, and because you've been moving backwards, you've actually jumped ahead forwards, and now the people who didn't have those same struggles, now they're behind. Sure, they got the external successes, but they feel empty. And now they're kind of at square zero again, or maybe square one. So, there's different ways to think about things. And I thought, you know what, that is a great way to think about it. Yeah, maybe feels like you've been moving backwards, but hey, you just jumped ahead because you have this new awareness now of what you're really here for. Okay, so this, oops. this title, Turning on Psychic Abilities, I thought it had some of the content from the course by Jeffrey Allen, but it turned out it was just a promo video, so I had the link and I got rid of it. But I do have the content, so I'll be talking more about that. I just didn't get to it today because it's quite a bit of content. And I'll just be doing a summary. Of course, I won't be doing the entire course because it's quite in depth. And I'm going to be discussing it through my own words, because otherwise that would be plagiarism. So this is kind of a preview for next week. Grounding energy. And I don't resonate with this grounding energy exercise that much. I like, this earth energy and then this cosmic light energy. And I'm like, I can't feel it. I don't know, is this real? And does it do anything? It's possible that it might just be an exercise to enhance your visualization skills. That's one aspect of it. Working with chakras, clearing limiting beliefs, developing intuition, becoming your higher self, meeting and talking to spirit guides. And there's part of it that talks about accessing the Library of Alexandria, if I remember correctly, which was kind of exciting. But I never got into it because I felt fear, like I was scared. We know that this fear can't hurt us. And as you process those emotions, you can feel safe within your body. So there's a certain amount of feeling safe within yourself that you do need to have to be able to embark on this kind of exploration. I didn't plan out my slides and my face today. That's okay though. I'll remember that for next time. Every time I realize something I need to remember for the next time. Okay, so what we're going to be focusing on most here is the set of videos by Gigi Young. So whether you agree with the philosophies that Gigi Young has, she talks a lot about aliens. The thing is that she has spent a huge amount of her life talking to aliens, basically. Or what we could call, what are they called? I forget. Basically beings from another dimension. So she's going to have work that is biased towards a certain way. That's okay. If you're not into it, if it's not for you, then that's what you're not tuning into. I do like some of the concepts, and she has experience in this. So I find these videos quite helpful if this is something that you want to work on or try out or experiment. And she has lots of other videos, so I would check those out too for further help and guidance. So developing your intuition, what she calls the clairs, can be frustrating or intimidating. Yeah, that's for sure. But every person has their own abilities and a slightly different set, like it's going to show up slightly differently, right? Everyone's walking their own path. Everyone has their unique set of abilities. And for some people, of course, it's just stronger to begin with, which is an advantage, but it's also a disadvantage because it can overcome and overtake their life sometimes. So she talks about 4 primary, and then there's another one that she talks about. So clairvoyant, that's the seeing, clairaudient, hearing, clairsentient, feeling, claircognizant, knowing. So that's with the mind. And then there's the 5th one on the end, which is the channeling and mediumship. Typically people have primary dominant abilities. So whether you've developed this skill or not, most people tend to gravitate towards one or just find it easier to use one over the other. Doesn't mean you can't develop the other ones as well. So for her primary one would be claircognizant, which I resonate with as well. And so she really wanted to develop the clairvoyant ability because that's the one that, when we think about psychics, that's the one that comes to mind. That's the one we're most familiar with. So why do you want to develop this ability? Well, it is inherent within you, and it is an extension of your intuition, what we would think of as intuition. And it's a way to access higher dimensional worlds, energy, and information. So if you just want to stay in your life and not get involved in that, of course, you don't want to do that. But if you're interested in it, then go ahead. Okay, so the first one we're going to talk about is clairvoyance. So that can come across as visions, and everyone can have visions, right? You might just get visions more than the other kind of way that information comes to you. So just because you don't get a lot of visions doesn't mean you're not highly intuitive, doesn't mean you don't possess the potential for psychic gifts or even already displaying them. So clairvoyance can come across as visions, seeing ghosts, words, letters, and symbols. So I'm not sure if she means they kind of appear to you kind of like in a vision, or you see words, letters, and symbols in your life and they kind of stand out and pop out to you. So, and here's the tricky part, is that this kind of thing, it is, how do we say, it's like, is that a message? Is it not? You have to learn the language of your higher self. So it's not easy. And you can go, the opposite way into interpreting everything a certain way. Like you can go too far with it. And so this just takes practice. And like I said, this is the type that what most people think of when they think of psychic ability. Okay, so then there's the clairsentient. And she lumped in empaths here because that a lot of empaths, they will take on other people's energy because they don't have strong enough boundaries and they're just so sensitive to other people's energy that these kind of intermingle and merge. Like there's that overlap with them. So this is experiencing higher dimensional energy via the emotional body or physical sensations. And I noticed that when I go to sessions that Kyle Cease does, that sometimes he will feel pain in a certain amount of it, in a certain area of his body, and he will communicate that with the other person, and they'll be like, yeah, I feel that there. So he experiences that, and I didn't realize, like, oh, that is a clairsentient until I did this research for this video. So yeah, we're familiar with the idea of like you can feel other people's emotions, but like the feeling other people's physical sensations, that's kind of strange. Oh, it would be strange. Like you probably never want to go into a hospital because you just start feeling things. So clairsentient, it's like being a sponge that's just taking in energy. And So you end up feeling the energy that comes into your bioenergetic field from places, from people. And you can even like meet a person and then start feeling feelings from them, like feeling intense sadness. You could start feeling possibly intense joy. And you could, like, this is so weird, you could experience this disconnect where they're like, oh, I'm good. But then you feel this intense sadness and you're like, are you? Are you good? And this can be hard when you are experiencing that. You're not sure if it's your emotions or their emotions. And especially when they're telling you something different than what's actually going on. And this is part of why we develop our intuition, is that, yeah, we can tell the truth of a situation. So the part of the clairsentience of feeling physical sensations, you can feel other people's physical symptoms. And it's this being very wide open, and often when people have this quite strongly, they tend to need to control their environment, tend to stay in their homes, prefer nature versus crowds of people. And there's the need to develop boundaries. This is not mine. Okay, so there's the clairaudience. So this is interpreting higher dimensional energy as sound. So she's not an expert in this. She said she's never met someone who has this as her primary or dominant clair, but it's possible. She identifies signs of this as ringing in the ears, like hearing someone say your name when there's like a dangerous situation, like there's not someone there who said your name, but you hear it. So that might be a spirit guide or your higher self letting you know, okay, there's danger ahead. Hearing sounds that happened in past events. She said, like walking into a concert hall and hearing the sound of piano playing. There's no one playing the piano. And that's kind of eerie. Wow. Yeah, like I know a relative who was talking about how they had a school field trip and they started seeing people in this old building. And I think everyone else there thought they were joking, but I was like, oh, they might just have this gift really strongly. That would be the clairvoyant. So I don't know if it was a ghost story or intended to be that way, or they really saw that. It's totally possible. Okay, claircognizance. So this is picking up higher dimensional energy as thought forms. So this is the one that I'm most familiar with, or I identify most with. And, you know, people who are analytical, who are scientifically minded, can often have this as their dominant one and not realize it. They think, oh, I'm so logical and rational. Okay, well, yeah, you're wired that way for a reason. So this is dominantly mental energy, and you get downloads of information and light. Very interesting. So it's not just information, it's light. There's a strong knowing that feels like you have known it all along. And it involves problem solving. So why does it require problem solving? Because at higher dimensions, they don't use human language. Like this is really interesting. Like that's why you can go on YouTube and you can see I think the channel name's Activate Consciousness. I'm not sure, I forget what it is, but there is videos of people speaking light languages and it seems like nonsense, but they are channeling directly. And of course you check into your intuition. You always check in with yourself and you say, what does this feel like? Does this feel like light or does this feel like dark? Carrie Kay shared an experience that she had walking in the astral plane, meeting this being that seemed clothed in light and just was radiant, and then who appeared to be an angel who said they were. I'm not sure if they said they were, but they were giving the impression. And she felt into it, and underneath the facade, it felt like rotting. It felt, ugh. So like there's a different feeling to what the appearance was. And she said, like, that's the level of discernment you need. You really need to tune into yourself because appearances are deceiving. And you always need to check for yourself, not just like, oh, that person said they were good. You got to always check for yourself. I've been seeing lots of light language videos and they're pretty insightful. Yeah, it's so interesting. I listen to them sometimes. So with the claircognizance, you need to be able to articulate blocks of information into relatable 3D language to make sense. This is what's happening. The information can come in as codes, patterns, symbols, and blocks of light. So it's seemingly nonsense. And if we think about it, last week during the system upgrades, that's what's happening. Maybe last weekend you thought, oh, I don't feel that much different. Nothing happened. Well, information came in, but it hasn't been integrated. It hasn't been assimilated yet. So often for people who have claircognizance, it's really important to meditate because you can become too mentally stimulated. You need to slow the mind down, kind of create this blank space to receive. And often they're articulate communicators because there is this problem-solving analytical aspect to understanding and what's happening. Because this is very much like speaking in tongues. Because this is what I used to do. I used to speak in tongues. And it's like, well, it's nonsense until someone can interpret it, right? If you're just going to speak tongues all the time, like, that's not always super helpful. But you need this balance, right? There is the gifts of people who speak in tongues, and there's the gifts of people who interpret. So here we kind of have both happening for yourself, but this is one where it can kind of happen for you automatically and you not knowing it. And it can come in as your own thoughts or your own ideas. So like it's so subtle, right? How do you know? Well, you know through experience. That's the only way. You develop that subtle awareness through experience. Okay, channeling and mediumship. So, yeah, I think most of us have heard about this, merging with other entities or consciousness and translating that information of that consciousness. That's really interesting, right? Abraham Hicks, there was an older one. I think it was the channeler that Abraham Hicks was inspired by that I was listening to, which was a bit of like this darker energy, but really, whoa, it was so very insightful and deep what was coming through. This is, yeah, I feel a little bit of fear about doing this too. I'm not sure how comfortable I am for myself doing this. Other people, go ahead. You're allowing yourself to be influenced. So there's that level of spiritual protection that you do need. Yeah, you can be relaying messages, like they can kind of take over yourself and kind of project a slightly different personality through you. That's very interesting when you see people channel. What's his name? I forget. Lee Harris, is it? Yeah, he does the channeling. There is Paul. Oh my gosh. I'm forgetting everyone's name. Oh well, you guys probably have at least heard of one medium or channeler. Okay. So I'm going to put the videos that I've referenced in the chat. This is another, or not in the chat, but in the description. Maybe I'll put them in the description and in the comments section. No channeling for me. I'm not available. Yeah. It's definitely scary. Maybe it's not. I don't know. For some people, they say like it's a very pleasant experience. So that's the thing. It's this is the baseline for all of it, is having that beautiful heart space. Because if you have a beautiful heart space, there's no room for nasty stuff. So here's another video. It's called How to Strengthen Your Psychic Abilities. It's by Gigi Young. So these are some tools that you can practice. And when I talk next week, we're going to discuss more tools as well. And they all you'll kind of see the similar theme. And I think, there's different ways that you can do things and you can figure out what works best for you. And, if you can't get this certain way to work, that's okay. It's maybe not your cup of tea. So one way to strengthen your ability, and this is about developing focus. So you need this focus to be able to receive messages from a higher dimension. So this is basically the point of all of this. Hold a vision of something in your third eye or mind for as long as possible. And this would be developing the clairvoyant ability. So the ego is always searching for a way to be dominant, to feel better or in control. So it's going to try and distract you from it. And as you get better at developing your visual technology, you will be able to receive more precise messages. And there's the foundation, keeping the right emotion in your heart. So she said, hold an image for at least 5 to 10 seconds and let it get longer and longer. Like, this is actually quite challenging to do. And you want to keep it as vivid as possible. This is basic visualization skills. I used to do them when I was quite young with racing, and it helped a lot. It's something you can do to improve your performance. But it's also an energy work tool. So you want to keep the image as vivid as possible. And once you get better at it, you can work with more complex images. So she said, just start with maybe a colored dot or maybe like a spiral, something very simple. And maybe even a red dot, so you can imagine the vivid colors. Maybe like a dot that changes color. So that's one aspect of it. So the other aspect of it is you want to practice a feeling of love. So, and for a lot of people, it feels warm, comforting, gentle. And you want to keep your mind quiet enough to let your heart come forward. And your ego and your mind will always get in the way of you trying to receive intuitive messages. you want to tap into your intuition, you got to let that ego go. And that's why like developing that discernment is so important, right? Like that's what we've been talking about in all the videos that I've been made since I started this channel, is like starting to recognize these emotions and where they're coming from, and these thought patterns, seeing them as patterns and not identifying with them. Because as we release all these patterns, we become this blank space to receive different information. If you think about it, like those repetitive thoughts and repetitive feelings, like those loops, they keep the train station busy, so nothing else can come in. So practicing a feeling of love, peace, and clarity. So that would be the clairsentient. You can do clairaudient too, practice imagining hearing different tones. I'm not going to do that. That's too much work. But you can go back and watch the full video so you get all the information. And interestingly enough, I've noticed that like as I've been working through emotions, there'll be a dominant emotion that comes up, and then I feel through that, and then there's emotions underneath it, and then there's like different qualities and tones of emotions, and I'm like, ooh, this is so interesting. You can actually practice consciously and intentionally practicing layering emotions on top of each other. So this is like I don't know, grad level emotional work. Linear consciousness always wants to refine things to a point. Multidimensional consciousness can hold many things existing in the same space. So this is the aspect of developing that multidimensional consciousness and practicing layering emotions. But that's the advanced level. Okay, so continuing to talk about developing focus. So we talked about creating a specific emotional state in your body. So, and then for you, this helps you to quiet your mind and redirect your focus. So what happens is, people who have these abilities naturally, they can be overwhelmed by different situations. And being able to change your emotions like that, I mean, we still want to process our emotions, but let's say you've got someone else's negative energy. If you can kind of shift your energy inside of you, like you're feeling their emotions, you feel like, I want to shift that. And if you practice a space of love, peace, clarity within yourself, then you can pull on that in a different situation to change your emotional state. So like, this is so cool. And this can, when, you can also get like thought forms influenced by people as well. So being able to clear your as well. So practicing this helps you change your emotions when being influenced by others, and helps you gain more control over your natural abilities. Like, oh, you tap into it more, and like, oh, this is cool, but at a certain point you might want to turn it off because it might be too much. And so developing this level of focus helps you gain that control, because having control is just as important as developing those abilities in the first place. Yeah, so this helps build strength and control as your abilities become more pronounced. Claircognizance comes through the unconscious mind, and it percolates down to the conscious mind. So this is one aspect which relates to the dream interpretation, is that that's your unconscious mind speaking to you. Of course, all of this, there is that element, because with dreams, you've got the visual aspect as well, right? So for the claircognizant aspect, you want to focus on clearing your mind, having an empty or clear mind. And visualize crystal clear energy in your mind. So she talked about your mind having a crystalline structure. And I don't know, maybe that's referring to your different energy bodies. I'm not exactly sure what she means by crystalline. Could have something to do with the water. I'm not sure. And you need to focus on having like the least amount of ego and the most amount of surrender. So we've been talking about surrender. So we've got all these basically ingredients, all these aspects that we've been discussing in the previous videos that are coming together. So interesting. And I didn't know what I was doing. I was just, okay, I'm going to do this now. I don't know what I'm going to do for topics for videos next week. And like, oh, okay, got this idea. I don't know where this is coming from. Well, I mean, now maybe we have an idea of how this works. So this is really about developing a dialogue with your higher self. And focus is necessary because when you're establishing communication and you don't have that focus, it's like flashing it in and out of that reality. Developing the ability to hold focus allows you to receive something substantial, like the whole message, not just this interrupted message with lots of static. So, I mean, there's this level of challenge to it, but I mean, we've got skills. Like, we can do this. It's so interesting that like we have this innate level of technology that we're using. When we think of technology, we think of phones, we think of all this other stuff, but there's actually this level of technology within ourselves that we don't utilize, that we can actually develop and use. It's kind of cool. Okay, so this is another video. It's called Clairvoyance, Talk, and Exercise. So, and it's about how to awaken clairvoyance. So, this exercise directly stimulates the third eye or pineal gland, which is what receives psychic information, and it reacts to different spectrums of light than our eyes. So that's how it's able to receive the different visual information. Whoa. So deep meditation and darkness balance and nourish the pineal gland, and it's activated by darkness. So the pineal gland produces melatonin, which is involved in regulating sleep. And this fake light that's all around us is draining for the pineal gland. Wow, this is so interesting because it's winter where I am, and it's so dark out that I'm making myself go and walk outside during the daylight hours to try and get some daylight. There's so much more darkness, but it's so interesting that darkness is part of awakening this psychic gift. So why do we want to do this? Well, this is part of our intuition, which is it's a primary survival mechanism, and it helps us be able to tell if that person in front of us is going to hurt us or help us. So how do you do the exercise? You cover your eyes in complete darkness. It's removing one type of sensory perception, the visual, to stimulate the higher level of seeing, the higher level of seeing with the pineal gland. So, and it's this ability to perceive this higher spectrum of energy. And it's like seeing two worlds at once. And this is something that the Egyptians did. They did these rituals for initiates, where they would go into the pyramids. Today there are darkness retreats, which can stimulate something similar. So how you do it is you have your eyes open in complete darkness. And in the video, she recommends a mask that you can get. And what that does is it blocks out all light and lets you keep your eyes open without pressure being against your eyes. So, and here's the other aspect to it, is that it's really important to be grounded, having a loving heart, and being emotionally and mentally stable, because as soon as you get the magnification of psychic ability, it amplifies the current issues in your life. So that's why I was talking about the story from the beginning, where I point out, you know, I've been working through these issues for the past 10 years and developed a certain level of stability. And it's possible that I had those issues in the first place because of this level of sensitivity. And at the time I was like, oh, I'm not gifted because this isn't working out for me. Well, guess what? It not working out for me then allowed me to build this stability in my life so that I had the foundation to develop it now. Your heart really has to be in the right place. If you think about it, there's lots of people who look okay on the outside, but their heart isn't in the right place. And most people watching this channel here have just such a deep level of sensitivity and compassion and intuition, and like, you know, someone can look at you and look at someone else and not recognize the difference. But looking on the inside, it's very visible from this perspective, from this aspect. Okay, so it's about having your eyes open in complete darkness, and your eyes need to be open so your brain knows that it's not just resting. And that's when the activation turns on. So I'm thinking I'm going to start working on and doing these exercises. And there we go. So those are the end of my slides for today. And I didn't do any like guided visualization or meditation within the video, but you've got the links. I'm going to post them right away after the live, so you can go and look through and see if there's any points that I missed that can help you. But what we talked about, it's fairly simple. I think these are some simple exercises that we can use, just like visualization, clearing the mind, visualizing like a red dot, some kind of simple shape for as long as you can, which might not be very long. There is the clearing your mind, basically meditation. There is developing and feeling emotional feelings. This is something that you could do on a walk. You know what? Maybe this will be my goal, that I will work on one for 10 minutes of the walk and work on another section of it for 10 minutes of the walk and another one for 10 minutes and have a bit of a regimen, because I've decided, you know, I'm going to do these walks every day, and this is something that I can focus on. Of course, if I'm walking, I want to keep my eyes open. But you can still practice it. Very interesting topic. Thank you for coming through with amazing content every week. Thank you. Awesome. Yeah, this is helpful because you are keeping me accountable there's this level of pressure that I wouldn't be in it and I wouldn't be challenged to do it, right? Because there was a dream interpretation and I was like, I don't know if I can interpret my dreams. And then I did, because like I felt that pressure, I talked about it, now I should do it. And it was really interesting to see how that process happened. And I was like, oh wow, I understand the text that I was explaining it better now that I actually did it. Yeah, so after this live, we're gonna close it up quite soon here. If you have anything you want to post or share, just go ahead and share it before I end. There's a bit of a lag in between when I say something and then you're watching it. So then I don't see, and then of course you have to type it in, and so then there's a bit of a lag for me to see whatever shows up in the chat. But in terms of, deciding what you're going to do with this, just set something really simple that seems kind of fun for you. And, something we can explore. I'm going to be introducing other techniques and methods next week. So I'm going to talk about Jeffrey Allen. Another teacher that I want to talk about is Leo Gura from actualize.org. Now, every person that you listen to has a different personality. They talk about things in a different way. You might not like them. I listen to a lot of Leo Gura's content, and it might resonate with some people. Other people it will not resonate with. So I'm going to be talking about his exercises too. And his exercises are going to be focused. I'm going to bring them up as an example of how to clear the mind. So meditation techniques, there is the level of awareness where you are thinking about your thoughts and kind of doing that self-inquiry. Self-inquiry, I've found, and self-inquiry in particular, is probably one of the most powerful methods that I've used in terms of that activity on the mental plane, being able to pinpoint and see where the ego is showing up, because it's so sneaky, right? So there is a certain level of, more normal to more woo. There is this range, but hopefully by the end of this series on developing spiritual abilities, I should probably do like a summary of all the different techniques that we talked about and like categorize them. And so then you'll have different ones to choose from. And there are other teachers out there. For example, a Kat from Sacred Soul Rising, she has courses on Reiki. She has different courses that she does, things that she is very experienced and knowledgeable in. I like listening to Loon Innate, who does Reiki online videos that I like listening to. She has a course as well. So, there's lots of different options where you can develop these different abilities within yourself. I'm working through one chakra every week. The week I'll work on the third eye, I'll practice what you've discussed today. Looking forward to it. Oh, cool. I've just started this week. Healing the root chakra. So cool. And that Mind Garden Mastery. I will take a look and check it out. So thank you so much for showing up and joining me here. And we'll see you